Hey gang, I thought I'd go again at doing this video. Sort of did a roundup about 2 or 3 months ago of all the results of my steel testing so far and drew some conclusions about what sorts of steel I liked. Now I did a video on this this morning, or yesterday morning, when I finished night shift. I thought it would be a good idea. I watched it back and I was pasty and I was blinking 1,000 times because I had dry night shift eyes. So with that in mind, I thought I would do it again and make it perhaps a bit more concise. So what I'm going to do is just go into the rough data that I've accumulated on different knife steels that I've been using in my knife cutting tests. You've seen my tests. I'll go into a bit about what my testing means and also just talk a bit about steels. A lot of it will be drawn from my sort of quasi-scientific testing that I do, but then the rest of it will just be from anecdotal evidence, which is just my experience with the knives, and that's probably a little bit less reliable because anecdotal evidence is probably one of the least regarded forms of evidence unless 100 people form the same conclusion. Anyway, so it'll just be mine, but also drawing obviously heavily from the numbers-based work I do. So let's talk about the science side of things that I have been doing in the backyard. So a scientific experiment has variables you're either testing or that you have to at least acknowledge, and then it has constants, things that you keep the same every time. The constants in my test are that I use the same edge. I use a work sharp kitchen knife guide to put a 40-degree inclusive convex edge on every single knife that gets tested, and then I cut the same material, which is $12.50 hanks of sisal twisted rope. So I do the same edge versus the same rope, and the rest of the things are the variables that I can't really either control or the ones that I do want to test. So the variable I want to test is the type of steel, so that's all good. Other variables that I can't really control, or simply because I can't afford to, is the Rockwell. So I often say the Rockwell may alter the numbers up or down a little bit depending on how it's treated, and also just the little things like, I would imagine, like some butterfly effect stuff, like the surface of the cutting board might have a micro, crack in it or something that I just can't quite see. It's backyard science at best. Anyway, going to use those results and we're going to get into what I think are the best, the worst, just categorize these steels as best as I can. I've got my phone here with the some notes on it, so forgive me if I glance down from time to time, but I'll just be, actually I'll hold it up here so it looks like I'm glancing at you. So I've categorized the steels into lots of categories, but first up, let's look at all the numbers. So on the screen right now, you'll have all the numbers of all the tests that I've done so far. So that's a whole bunch of information there, and that is what it is. Some people don't like where their favorite steel is on this. It's just what happened. You can watch the full thing and you can look at any video with that steel featured and you can see how it all went down. So I'm sorry if what you like isn't when you're right spot. Maybe your company that you like treats it a whole lot better or treats it differently, but it's pretty much the same and pretty much in line with another pretty well regarded form of edge testing, the Catra card test, which you can get through a link and I'll probably just flash up on the screen right now. More or less consistent, more or less. So anyway, let's group some steels in. So the first group of steels is the crazy steels. So the crazy steels, there's just one in there, maybe two. Maximet is a crazy steel. It held its edge way longer, much more than just what was incrementally being better and better. So by that I mean 110V was great, and then so S110V was great, then you had your M390, which was a bit better, then your ZDP 189, which was a bit better, then your CPM 10V, which is a bit better, and then there was Maximet right out here. So Maximet is a crazy steel. However, it has its problems. It's fledgling steel, it's not quite being heat treated in some examples that I've seen. And yeah, there's could be some issues with it rusting as well. It ships with a silica gel packet in there, for goodness sake, so it must rust fairly easily. So the next category are some excellent edge retention steels. So these are CPM 10V, ZDP 189, M390, not M4, CTX 40CP, and S110V. So those steels are all going straight fit, long edge retention, and they have some drawbacks because of it. So a lot of them suffer with stainlessness issues. I think Maximet would be one of those as well. All but M390, in fact, and perhaps CTS 40CP, which seem to behave pretty similarly to M390, but S110V, ZDP189, and 10V will rust pretty quickly, and they have a tendency to chip as well if you use them for perhaps twisty or hard use tasks. But against your man-mades, like your fibrous stuff, they'll cut for days. Next is great on the screen now, great edge retention, but also really good secondary attributes too. So M390, XHP, LMAX, LC200N, and CPM 3V. So let's talk about them one by one. M390 is a really good tough steel. So I couldn't put 40 CV into this as well, or 40 CP into it, because I haven't used it in such a way. But really tough steel as well. Survive Knife use it in their impact knives. XHP, great price, really competitively priced steel, and holds an edge up with the big boys. LMAX is again a really good impact steel. First Edge will be using it on their really tough survival knives. LC200N, awesome for stainlessness, rust-proof, Spyderco says, but also cutting with the high-grade powder steels. M4 and CPM 3V, both are great for impact tasks. They don't hold as crazy long as the dedicated cutting-only steels, but M4, every Blade Sports blade pretty much is made of M4, and that's got to be saying something, because Blade Sports steels are impacting dry 2x4s all day, and M4 is almost universally the steel of choice for that. And 3V, so tough that when Bark River make knife stocks, they make the same knife when they decide they're using 3V. It doesn't have to be as thick, because a third of an inch of 3V is as tough as a quarter of an inch of A2, so very, very cool there. And numbers aren't so bad either. Next steel is good edge retention at a good price. So CTS XHP, S35VN from Kaiser, S30V, and HAP 40 I put in there as well. HAP 40 you can get at a pretty decent price, usually in kitchen knives, but it's not particularly common, so perhaps, I don't know whether I should have included it or not, but yeah, S30V on your Benchmade. I mean, this isn't a cheap knife, but you can get S30V really cheap. And then Kaiser selling S35VN holds a great edge for a great length of time. Then we've got, what's next? Our next category is great non-powder metal steels that hold a good edge for their price, or just a good value in my opinion. So 154 cm, D2, 01 steel. I've got some great 01 in my Tyndall Knives blade at the moment. Behaves really, really well. 14C28N, Opinel C75. Gee, this is good stuff for $12. Cuts really well, really easy to resharpen. And Paul Boss's 420HC treatment for $1. So good value there. I'll get to my favourite steels later. We will just have a look at, I've got a few other categories. Steels to avoid. So I'm not going to be saying AUS8, I'm not going to be saying HCR13 MOV, anything like that. They all have their place. The steels you should avoid are the nameless, brandless steels, the mystery steels, the ones, pretty much if a company isn't saying what the steel is, if they just say it's stainless, then it's probably not worth buying or not worth using. It's not going to hold an edge, or at least you wouldn't want to take it to the bank that it's going to hold an edge any more than, hey, the 6 cuts of my junk steel, because it could just be that same junk steel. So these are the ones on the screen that I would just avoid. And the Gerber Mystery Steel did end up being 7CR, 13 MOV. The next steels, whilst not bad, just don't pay too much money for them. AUS8 and N690 in particular. And AUS8 is on Almar Falcons for like 150 Australian dollars, and it is just not worth it. This is a great knife and one of my favourites, but the material value is not there. N690 is a weird one. Italian makers like Fox and Lion Steel, companies like that, they'll use N690 and they'll still charge you $300 for it. And I know those knives are often excellently finished, the handle materials might be amazing, but if you go in thinking you're going to get $300 edge retention, it's just not the case. In my testing it performed a bit better than VG10, but not as good as like your D2 or your 154 CMs, things like that. So it doesn't seem to be getting the cuts per dollar that I would expect to be getting for a $300 knife. 420HC is in multi-tools, a lot of multi-tools. Multi-tools are expensive. None of that money is going into the blade steel. It's just not that good a steel. Don't pay more than $50 for a, even in Australia, for a knife with 420HC, unless it's got that good Paul Boss heat treatment. And VG10, SOG and Spyderco are shockers for overpricing the shit out of VG10. Spyderco's Japanese factory will make things like the Ouroboros for, sell it for $300 Australian dollars, 170 American dollars. SOG will sell Vulcans for $240. They'll sell, this is Australian dollars, all sorts of really nice looking knives, but the steel just isn't going to hold. So just be mindful how much you pay for those steels. They're not bad, but just be careful how much you pay. That is all. The best steels for impact tasks, you've got CPM 3V, A2, 1095, 01, 5160 and 420HC. So CPM 3V here on a cold steel Ultimate Hunter or Master Hunter, this one is. Really, really good, high impact steel, cuts for ages, but is expensive. This is the cheapest example of it you can get. It's still 180 Australian dollars, it's still not a cheap knife. So you may well just want to lose a little bit of that edge retention and get something that's made in 01 or 1095 even. So Schrade will give you, for about 50 or 60 US dollars, 70 Australian dollars, this SCHF 42D. And that's got great toughness. The edge retention is not quite there, but that might be just fine for you. And 420HC in my Gerber Strong Arm, I've done horrible things with that steel and it just kept on fighting. So no worries with that as an impact steel whatsoever. In fact, I actually almost prefer it to some of the, I'd probably almost take a 420HC over a 1095 or something like that, because the stainlessness is just there, and it's nice to just be able to wash it with water and not worry about getting all the specs off. You don't have to deal with coatings if you don't want a coated knife. It's good, I like it, and it's no issues with it whatsoever. So, before I get to my favourite steels, I guess the question is, are you a steel snob? Would you not buy an 8CR knife? Would you not? As long as the price is okay, the way I sort of think of it is, you've seen the rough numbers for these steels and how much they cut. Take that as a guide for perhaps how much money you should be spending on them, more than anything. And the thing is, as well, if you can sharpen, which I've just got the ability to sharpen quite simply with my Tormek, if you can sharpen through gadget or through sheer skill and ease of doing it because you've done it so often, the steel edge retention is going to be a lot less important. In fact, you might even find toughness and stainlessness is going to be the more important attributes for you. Because if you can put that edge straight back on without worrying and get the nice, hair popping edge, then you know what, I'd probably even suggest that VG10 at the 70 odd cuts it's doing is probably as far as you really ever need to go or would ever even want to go. If you're happy to sharpen, then all it's going to do is maybe shorten the life of the knife in terms of, the actual blade getting devoured up this way. That's all you're really going to do. But really, I've got no issues with the lower edge end steels, as long as you're not paying too much for them. If you learn to sharpen, you'll still have a great time with all those steels. No worries at all. If you can't sharpen, that's where the longer edge retentions might last, or if you just love the numbers like I do. That's pretty much it. Alright, so what are my favourite steels? Well, my favourite steel so far is it's nowhere near the highest performing in terms of cuts or edge retention or anything like that. But my favourite steel so far is LC200N on the Spyderco Spidey Chef. Just because it's impressive, it's doing two really good things at once. It's been really corrosion resistant, as well as holding an edge as long as the S30Vs and S35VNs and all that sort of thing. So you got this. If you look at my numbers, the Kaiser, I think it actually outdid the Kaiser Gemini's S35VN a little bit. It's a good steel, and I really do like it. It's if I could make a knife, if I was to make my own knife, I'd be asking for this, for sure. Secondly, these aren't really ranked. Perhaps LC200N is my favourite. I really do like CPM 3V though. Again, it's nowhere near the maximum levels of endless cutting, but it's versatile, You could use this in folding knives if you coated it. You really could. Cold steel just kind of puts this black wash sort of DLC coating on it and definitely seems to do the trick just fine. But great for outdoor knives, undeniably good. It's good stuff, no problems at all with that. Then you've got CTS XHP, cold steels, folding knife steel of choice. It's good. It really is good for the price, especially. You don't have to spend too much on it. M390, simply a bit like that and LMAX, kind of very similar. And LMAX is also doing really well for me with this this zero tolerance 0562 as well. But I've had a couple of M390 blades, and yeah, it's excellent stuff. The rumours and the gossip is true. It's probably one of the most balanced of the steels you can get at the moment. And then S30V, good old S30V, on my Benchmade at least, has been excellent. It really has. It's nowhere near the highest of high end anymore, but it's definitely a performer, and it's it's easy enough to sharpen. Yeah, you could probably put S35 in the same place, whatever. No problems with it at all. My favourite low budget steels are the 420HC for your outdoor use. I like your 4116. So say in your cold steel bushman, this knife here in the 4116 cut for a really good length of time, for about as long as Buck's 420HC. So it really did knock this steel up a couple of notches. This is a very strange knife, by the way. I'll have to do a review on it at some point. It's got this air of danger to it. Anyway, so that's a really good one as well. And what else? What else I need to cover? A couple of steels that I haven't quite formed an opinion on yet. So I've got some H1 in. This is going to be like I'm going to test it a few times, because apparently the rumor is with this is that it gets harder as it gets older and as you use it more. So I'm very curious to see if the numbers change as I test it upwards and upwards. So I might just do one big compilation video, set a couple of months apart and then a couple of months apart again. So it might be a bit of a wait on the H1. And then zero tolerance is S35VN. Yes, I was going to get to that as well. People were not happy that it didn't do well for me. They sort of, which people sort of think that I'm caught. I want the controversy. You don't understand. I'm paying my own money for these knives. I want them to hold their edges. It's really dismaying when they don't. So it's not like I don't want them to fail. It's not a matter of them being a bit thicker behind the edge or anything, because the very thick behind the edge line steel and Nylox cut about as long as it should, like as a little bit longer than D2, because it's a sort of special treatment of D2. It's not even that, it's just something about that steel with those two knives I used, the 0909, which I did twice with, and the 0450, which I did twice with as well, and reground. It just wasn't happening. They're softer than they seem like they should be. So I don't know whether it's on purpose. I've sent a couple of emails to ZT, but I haven't got responses, so I'm not sure if they probably just don't want to engage in it. It's fine. And the most important thing is, if you're still enjoying the knives, great. Like, it just doesn't matter. You have to sharpen them a couple of times more. That's all good. My ZTs I didn't have any issues with them being from irreputable. They're from authorized sellers and all that stuff. It just was what it was. So it's intentional. It's not. We'll do a couple more ZT tests. I'll try and track down a couple of other zero tolerance S35VN knives, and when I do, I'll certainly test them and I'll do it in full. As I say, you can watch all this stuff in full. Like, it's not. If you got any doubts, just check the video. You'll see that I speed it up, obviously, but it's because no one wants to watch 20 minutes of cutting rope. But I don't know. I wish they did better, but they just didn't. So if it's their idea that to have a softer, more tough steel, then great, that's completely fine. And with the 100, it was 112 that the 0909 cut. That's still not terrible. Like, you're still getting a really well-made knife. And again, if you can sharpen, which I can now, maybe it wouldn't bother me as much. But I just thought I'm not going to curb the data, and I certainly kind of did wish they cut more, but they didn't. So I'm sorry if that offended you or upset you, or you wished you're a real zero tolerance fan and it didn't do the trick for you, but it's just what it was. So, but if it changes, and the minute I get a ZT that does the 160 to 200 that I was sort of expecting, then I'll put the best music ever behind the cut test. Guarantee it'll be like the boss music from when you fight Seymour in Final Fantasy X, or some really cool jazzy rock, VG rock song. Anyway, so that's about all the cut test results I've got for you so far. Rather than giving opinions on every single steel, you can more or less draw a line from where it did, and probably everyone else's experience as well. Without getting too anecdotal, I think I've got a reasonably decent level of understanding of these steels from this test and from my use. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.